is Bean to Barstool, a podcast that looks at the intersections of craft beer and craft chocolate. My name is David Nilsson. I'm a professional beer writer and an advanced cicerone, and the creator and host of this show. The music for this episode is by my dear friend, indie folk musician Anna P.S. You can find out more about Anna's music in the show notes or at her website, annapsmusic.com. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bean to Barstool. Hey everyone, welcome to Bean to Barstool Bite Sized, where we spend about 5 minutes with some of our favorite people from craft beer and craft chocolate. Today we hear from Hank Marshall and Peter Batinski at Hi-Wire Brewing in Asheville, North Carolina. Hi-Wire brews an Imperial Stout line called 10W-40, made with French broad chocolate cacao, Dynamite coffee, and Ugandan vanilla, as well as a range of other flavor ingredients to evoke specific flavor concepts like Vietnamese coffee, blueberry crumble, or chocolate taco. Listen in as Hank and Peter talk about the base beer for 10W-40 and how they work with coffee, cacao, and vanilla.
So the base beer is kind of like a big roasty, chocolatey stout. Kind of thinking old school stout, but making some room for kind of all your adjuncts and whatnot. So you're kind of appealing to folks that will, enjoy a big stout, but also, some additions here and there of fruit or extra chocolate or some other wild flavors that we can add in. Yeah, so we've got the cacao nibs. So that's the main chocolate. We've got Ugandan vanilla and a dark roast from a local coffee roaster.
And is that always the same coffee roaster, or does that switch around?
About 99% of the time, it's going to be Dynamite, which is kind of the base recipe. If we're looking to switch it up, we've done that in the past on things like the Vietnamese coffee variant, where we did a cupping with another local roaster and kind of dialed it in for a different profile.
So you guys do so many different variants on top of this base beer. What is it about the base 10W-40 that you feel like is such a flexible platform? What makes it distinctive that allows it to work for so many different flavor profiles?
You try 10W by itself, it's just a damn good milk stout. It's chocolatey, it's not too chocolatey. It's roasty, it's not too roasty. So we have all these things to play off of, and those initial malt and beer flavors are really kind of soft, and so that allows us to work off of it into other dynamics. Because one beer we were going to talk to you about right here is this. We have a chocolate taco 10W. if that was too roasty, that beer wouldn't work.
So you guys work with French Broad Chocolates. They're in Asheville, well-known bean to bar chocolate company. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with them and how that works in the space for using their stuff for your beer.
French Broad is always willing to do custom this, custom that, whatever we want. And that's like the benefit of that relationship is, does this beer need a certain flavor from a certain kind of chocolate? They're there to make that happen. Like, that's the beauty of that relationship. And their level of knowledge is unprecedented.
And do you always use the same nibs from them or the same products, or do you use a blend or whatever they have available? How does that work?
So the nibs that we get are made to order. So it's kind of whatever's coming down the line at the time. And there's, we're not getting a ton of nuance from the nibs. So we're not looking for any kind of specific other than kind of the chocolatey, that nutty profile that they're giving off. So typically, whatever they're processing in the moment for the nibs portion is good with us.
So there's not really like an origin selection process where you're picking a specific bean for a specific version or anything?
There's not an origin selection process, no.
Sure. Let's talk about how you use the cacao and the other adjuncts in this beer. How do you infuse those flavors when you're brewing the beer?
So once the beer is finished, transferred into bright, we're actually recirculating the finished beer on the nibs and on the coffee. So it's in a hop back style vessel. It gets about a 4-hour recirc, and it's just, in a fine mesh bag and circulating through, and that's where it's picking up all its flavor. The coffee is ground, so picking up a little bit more flavor from the coffee than you would if it was whole bean.
And you're doing those both at the same time?
That's correct.
You don't find that one, does that quicker or slower than the other? You just put them both in for the same amount of time?
Yeah, they might, pick one up faster or slower, but the way we've got the target profile set right now is the way that we've done it forever. So we're finding that, you get a nice balance of the chocolate and the coffee with doing them together, and one's not going to be more astringent than the other or pulling a different flavor profile.
And you guys said you're doing whole bean now?
We're doing ground.
Ground, yeah.
And does that timing get changed at all based on what the finished version of the beer is going to be, if you want more intensity or less intensity?
Traditionally, if we're looking for more or less intensity, we'll, remove some of the volume, but the timing stays the same, kind of based around the volume of beer in the tank, whereas the volume of the chocolate or the coffee as well will be changed if we're looking for more or less intensity.
And then you mentioned vanilla. Is that going in at the same time, or when are you adding that?
So the vanilla is whole bean vanilla. They're hand split by the brewers, and that is steeped in the whirlpool throughout the entire whirlpool process. So it's hanging out in there until the knockout is finished. So that's all extracted hot side.
You can find out more about Hi-Wire Brewing in the show notes. You can listen to my entire conversation with Hank and Peter back in episode 57. I'll share that in the show notes as well. The music today was by my dear friend Anna P.S. My name is David Nilsson. Thanks for listening to Bean to Barstool Bite Sized.